Good morning, everybody. My name is Doug Dammann, curator of the Civil War Museum in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Today I wanted to feature and highlight a collection of artifacts pertaining to Elmer Ellsworth. We currently have them on display in our Fiery Trial Gallery. And the collection came to us through a partnership that we have with the Lake Forest Academy in Lake Forest, Illinois. Now, a lot of people out there might be familiar or may have heard the name Elmer Ellsworth and be familiar with him in that he was colonel of the 11th New York Regiment. Ellsworth was killed May 24th, 1861 in Alexandria, Virginia. He was the first Union officer killed during the war, and the circumstances of his death are rather unique. He was coming down from the attic of a hotel in Alexandria, Virginia, carrying a Confederate flag when the owner of said hotel leveled a shotgun and shot him as he came down the stairs. So Ellsworth's death he was not killed on a battlefield, but he was killed in Alexandria, Virginia, leading his troops. So that story is pretty well known about Ellsworth. But what's not as well known is Ellsworth's prior summer and his connection to the upper Midwest. 160 years ago, in 1860, in the summer of 1860, Elmer Ellsworth was advertised and known as the most talked about man in the United States. And why was that? Why was this young man the biggest celebrity in the United States in the summer of 1860? Well, it had to do with a group that he led known as the United States Zouave Cadets. Now, this group was around 50 individuals, 50 young men from Chicago, that Ellsworth had trained for 1859 and 1860 in a new Zouave style of military training. They wore colorful uniforms. They had baggy pants. The uniform's design was to give them freedom of movement for what they were going to do using this Zouave training and debuting it at these encampments and these special performances that they arranged throughout the United States. So in the spring, summer of 1860, Ellsworth led this group of 50 individuals on a tour of the 20 principal cities of the northern half of the U.S. They went east, they were in the Detroit area, they were through Ohio, they ended up in upstate New York, they trained for the cadets at West Point, they even went to the grounds of the White House and debuted their training for President Buchanan in the summer of 1860, before coming back to Springfield and then ultimately to Chicago by the end of the summer. Throughout this whole tour, the press was following Ellsworth, recording what the group was doing at each of their stops. It wasn't uncommon for 5, 10, 15,000 people to come out to view them doing these drills in local parks. A few times they did them indoors in theaters in Boston and in New York. And so it was a tremendous visual display, a display of military drill and precision, and it really captured the imagination of the United States public in the summer of 1860. So Ellsworth returned to Chicago at that time. He had befriended Abraham Lincoln. Later on, the following year, he actually gave a few campaign speeches for Lincoln in 1860 during the Lincoln campaign. And when Lincoln was elected, he actually traveled with President Lincoln on the presidential train from Springfield out to Washington, D.C. in February of 1861. So that is how Ellsworth's connection to Lincoln occurred and how he ended up being in Washington, D.C. when the war broke out in 1861, before traveling to New York to raise his regiment of New York firemen and for the 11th New York. But the pieces that we have here are some wonderful examples of photography of Ellsworth, some unpublished things that were part of that Lake Forest collection, some things that Ellsworth actually painted or sent to his fiancée, Carrie Spafford. She was from Rockford, Illinois. You'll see a few things in the case that Ellsworth sent to her. And then after Ellsworth's death in the spring of 1861, the community, the northern community really used his death as propaganda to get people to volunteer, to avenge Ellsworth. As you can see, there are some of those envelopes with the Avenge Ellsworth or Ellsworth's likeness on the corner of the envelope. They were used to stir up patriotic feelings in the North to get people to enlist in the Union Army. So we have a tremendous amount of this Ellsworth-related material here in the museum, both during his time while he served in the Union Army, after his death. But for our purposes today and our discussion about Ellsworth being the most talked about man in America in 1860, we also have a tremendous amount of material that relates to his pre-war time in Chicago, organizing the U.S. Zouave Cadets, and that tour that they made in 1860. So we hope you'll come to the museum, get a chance to see it in person real soon. Everyone, we'll see you here in Kenosha very soon. Have a great summer, and we'll do another one of these collection tidbits real soon. Take care.